Welcome to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. How many of you work with managers or are leaders that lead with outdated leadership practices? Now, you'll know if you're old school if you hear, "Don't bring me problems, bring me solutions." Many individuals are promoted on their rockstar performance, but that doesn't mean that they will succeed as a good manager. Today, we'll address and discuss outdated management habits that companies still embrace. And guess what? Employees are not always the problem. Today, I'm joined by Corina Walsh, CEO and founder of Shift People Development, Inc. Corina is also the author of Modern Manager, Conquering the 5 Frustrations of Leadership. Corina, welcome to Empowered. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I've enjoyed your book. I've been reading it. Let's begin. What is a modern manager?
A modern manager is a leader who has the skills to inspire performance from their team as opposed to having to be a driver of performance with their team. So today's employee really wants to know that their manager cares about them. It's not enough just to hit KPIs and hit the goals. You have to actually care about the future of your employees. You have to know how to develop them. So a modern manager has that broad people-centric leadership skill set that really allows them to inspire and motivate their team. So it's not just technical abilities, you have to have this suite of people skills as well.
You know, and that's evolved so much through the years. Why do women need to care about showing up as a modern manager?
Women specifically need to care about this skill set because it's about their resilience. So if you don't have the skills that you need to do something, obviously it's going to drain you quite a bit. And what I'm hearing from my clients, from my corporate clients I work with, is that they're even struggling to get some women to fill management roles. Women are saying no to stepping up and taking on that extra responsibility because they're seeing how difficult the role is, how stressful it can be. And I say, but wait, if you support these female leaders with the skill sets, with the leadership development that they need, it won't be nearly as stressful. And then they can thrive in those roles and they can remain resilient. You don't have to burn out in a leadership role. If you have the tools you need, it can actually be an enjoyable career process for you.
You know, and I love the fact that you just said that because through the years, especially the past maybe 2 or 3 years, I've read so many articles about women being promoted because corporations want to have women in leadership roles. However, they don't have the tools to support these women. And unfortunately, they end up failing because they don't have that support system.
Absolutely, and that is a reality. And it's a reality for all leaders, male, female. But I mean, you can't expect someone to just automatically be good at leading others and getting performance from others just because you were a good performer and good at your job. So you have to equip people, especially women, with the right leadership skills and the leadership development to do their job.
So in the introduction, I talked about employees are not always the problem. Would you please explain this?
Well, an employee can only really perform at the level of their manager. And so, what happens when managers come through my program is that they start to have these aha moments and they say things like, oh, I wasn't communicating effectively. I'm working with an incomplete delegation process. I don't fully understand what's all the nuances that's involved with delegating. And so then the manager starts to realize that the employee's performance is impacted by their leadership style, their ability to communicate, their ability to delegate. And that's why the employee is not always the problem. Getting results, getting performance is a two-way street. The employee has to bring their best self and their energy to work, but you have to have a good leader who understands how to communicate, delegate, give good feedback, coach the employee for higher levels of performance. So it's definitely a two-way street when it comes to getting performance.
And I love the fact that you talked about communication, because to me, that is the number one thing, regardless of what the relationship is, whether it's
Mhm.
personal, friendship, work. Communication to me is the number one thing. And the one
Right.
thing that I like that you just said too, that's important to me, with people that I manage, I think it's really important to mentor them through the day. And not just, sitting down at the end of the month or whatever, but every day to me is a mentorship day. And every day to me is a learning day with an aha moment. And I think it's important for managers to actually take the time and spend that time with everyone that they manage. So please don't go away. We'll be right back with more Corina Walsh and all that she has to teach us. Welcome back to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. Today's episode, we're discussing leadership skills for the modern workplace. Now, Corina, I want to talk to you about micromanagement because this seems to be a thing. What is the real issue with micromanagement today? And how does not understanding micromanagement impact women leaders?
Absolutely. So the problem with micromanagement today is that people are so afraid, managers are so afraid of being labeled a micromanager that they don't manage enough. If you are in my age range, Gen X, you may have suffered in the when you started your career in the 90s under the thumb of a micromanager. And we all know the damage that a micromanager can do to an employee. But unfortunately, the fear and the folklore of micromanagement has really led newer managers today to think that any type of oversight is actually micromanagement, and that's just not true. Doing a check-in, asking for an update, giving constructive feedback, those things are not micromanagement, they're just management. And I think for women in leadership roles, maybe they're used to being under the microscope a little more closely. Maybe they feel that they're judged a little more if they check in too often with an employee, and they are afraid of being accused of a micromanager. But I train women leaders on how to push back on that and say, you know what, I'm not micromanaging, I'm just managing. And you don't want to go too far in the other direction and become a macro manager. So really what I advise women leaders to do is to check in with their employees and ask them, am I providing enough support? Do you need a little more support from me, a little more guidance and help from me? And then that way you can find that management balance of not managing too much and not managing too little.
And I love that. To me, that's just communicating with the people that you're working with. But I want to go to the next level now about delegating. Everyone's told to delegate, but sometimes it's just so much easier and faster to do it yourself. But that's a problem as well. So, why is delegating such an important skill for women in the workplace?
I think we are all familiar with the fact that women end up taking on a lot of invisible, what we call invisible work. And invisible work could be extra tasks that don't fit into your job description. It could be the mentoring, it could be the DEI efforts, it could be being on the committee or planning the social event. And if your plate is starting to overflow because of that invisible work, first of all, the invisible work shouldn't be happening. But until we can fix that, women need to make sure that their workload isn't, flowing over on their plate. And in order to do that, you have to be really effective at delegation. And to your point, it's so easy to say things like, oh, it's faster and easier if I do it myself. And sometimes that is the case. But it's only faster the first time you do it because then you're stuck doing your employee's job. And if you are going to look like an effective leader, you really need to be the workflow, not where the work stops. You can't be the bottleneck for the work. And you just don't look effective if you're not delegating. But for any woman who finds that she has to take on some of these extra tasks that don't really fit in her job description, you need to make sure you can get other work off your plate so that you can focus on those higher level tasks that you're being paid to do because you're not being paid to do your employee's job.
This is very true. So, let's go to the other end of the spectrum then. What is delegation disappointment?
Delegation disappointment is when a manager finally delegates work to an employee. Maybe they're feeling good because they finally got something off their plate, but then unfortunately the work comes back to them either insufficient, meaning it's not quite done to the quality they need, or the work didn't get done at all. And this is usually when the manager starts telling themselves stories like it's faster and easier if I do it myself, as you just said, or they just kind of resign themselves that this is work that they're going to have to do, and that is absolutely not effective. I think what most managers are operating with is an incomplete process for delegating. So delegating is not simply assigning work; it's an actual process that starts with communicating expectations, doing check-ins, giving constructive feedback to try and improve performance. And it's really important that if an employee is doing work for you and the work is not up to par, that you show them why it's not up to par and you give them a chance to do that work again. So there is upfront effort for long-term gain. And that's what a lot of the women who come through my programs need to understand, that it's not about taking the work back and doing it yourself. It's about investing in that delegation process so you can get your employee to a place where they are confident and competent, and then they can support you in your role.
And I love that. I mean, it basically comes down to communication yet again, which is really, really important with, whether you're working with somebody or a relationship. But when we come back from this commercial break, I really want to get into the importance of, should women strive to be irreplaceable at work? Because a lot of people think, well, no, they need me, but you're not always needed. So please don't go away. We'll be right back with more. Welcome back to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. Today, we're discussing leadership skills for the modern workplace. So, Corina, we were talking about this, or we haven't really delved into it, but should women strive to be irreplaceable at work?
No, absolutely not. If you're irreplaceable, you cannot be promoted. And this is a key leadership mistake, a key career mistake I see women make, and that I have to coach women on. But no, being irreplaceable is not the key goal. Being strategic and being innovative is the goal, especially in today's workplace where, tech companies are handing out memos that you better figure out how to use AI, or we won't be hiring anyone else to support you. So no, it's not about being irreplaceable. I have coached women who, have tried to learn everything they can about the company so they can be as knowledgeable as possible. And basically they end up becoming the company wiki. And that's wonderful. And everyone's going to love you and you're going to be a go-to resource and they're never going to let you leave that role. So if that's what you want for your career, no judgment, that's totally fine. But if you have your sights set on moving up or moving across and broadening your own skill set in your own career, being irreplaceable is definitely not what we're going for.
I love that you said that, because there's so many people that focus on their job and think, no, no, they need me. They'll never get rid of me. I have a job for life. But you're right. Like, if you are irreplaceable, you're never going to get promoted to that higher rank or that manager job or the CFO or the CEO or president's job, because this is all they think that you can do. And I'm so happy that you brought that up. I want to move on to, how critical is it that women can accept constructive feedback? Because a
Mhm.
lot of times we end up taking it personally.
That's right. Well, speaking of moving up, no one can improve our skill set, our knowledge without good quality constructive feedback. And again, if I could touch on a comment I made earlier about women feeling like maybe they're under the microscope, I've noticed that when I give constructive feedback to women, sometimes they can get a little bit defensive. And perhaps that's not necessarily a quality we associate with female leaders. But again, I think it could be because women typically feel extra pressure. We feel like we have to work twice as hard to get half as far as perhaps our male counterparts. So I do see a little bit of defensiveness sometimes, or coming up with reasons why something is happening. And then the other issue that I've noticed with some female leaders is that they've made it to a certain level of success. So perhaps they feel that they don't need any more feedback. I've reached this level, and who is anyone to be telling me that I need to improve? The thing is, if you adopt that modern learning mindset, there's always room to improve. No matter how much you know, no matter how far you get in your career, no one can improve without good quality feedback. And it doesn't matter how much you know, there's always going to be room for you to improve. And you can look at it as going from good to great. No one is trying to criticize you. If the feedback is given correctly and it's really useful feedback, use it as an opportunity to go from good to great or great to exceptional.
And I love that, because we all need feedback. I mean, none of us are perfect, because there's no such thing. It's a moving scale, right? Like, if
Right.
you strive for perfection, you're just going to lose on a regular basis. But I think knowledge is power, and I think that as women, in order to keep growing, we need to keep educating ourselves. We need to keep going out networking and meeting new people and understanding new roles and new jobs, because so much is, like, with AI and everything else, everything is changing right now. And there are so many jobs that we have now that we never had 2 years ago. So we're constantly learning. And I think that's really, really important. But stepping back for a moment, how should a female leader respond to ambiguous feedback from their manager?
I would ask for some examples. I would ask the manager to be more specific. Can you tell me exactly what you're referring to here? Can you give me some examples? And is the feedback something that is subjective, or is it something more tangible that the female leader could actually use? And the second question I would ask is, I'm curious why this is important to you. So if you have a manager who is giving you some constructive feedback, telling you need to do something differently, or change the way you do something, I will be asking them for the context. Tell me why this is important that I do it this way. Why is it important that I change this? And perhaps there's just a misunderstanding of how to get results, because some managers can get stuck in this place of it has to be done the way I want it done or the way I would do it. And that could lead them to provide ineffective feedback.
And I think feedback is really important. And when we come back, we're going to continue the conversation of feedback because I think it's really important for us to grow. So please don't go away. We'll be right back with more modern leadership. Welcome back to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. I'm joined by Corina Walsh. She's CEO and founder of Shift People Development, Inc. And we're discussing leadership skills for the modern workplace. Corina is also the author of Modern Manager, Conquering the 5 Frustrations of Leadership. So let's delve in. What is the element of a feedback conversation that most women leaders miss when giving feedback?
When giving feedback, the element that often gets missed is explaining why you're giving someone this feedback. So without the context of why you're asking someone to change how they operate, how they perform, their behavior, there's very little someone can do with that information. If you want to truly motivate someone to change the way they work, change their behavior, which can be difficult, right? We all know how hard change can be. And if you really want to motivate someone, you have to give them the proper context. And so the little phrase that I train managers to remember is, I'm giving you this feedback because. Let the employee know that you're not just picking on them, that are being overly critical. This feedback matters. Here's the context. Here's why this change needs to happen. Here's why you need to improve the way you're doing this, why you need to change your behavior. And that's how you're going to tap into someone's sense of purpose and their intrinsic motivation. And when it comes to being a modern manager, that's what employees are looking for today. They're looking for a leader who can inspire them to do better and be better. So context is everything. Make sure you give someone the reason why you're giving them the feedback. And if you can tie that reason to something that's important to them, you'll really hit that intrinsic motivation.
I meet so many coaches right now, and there's so many women out there that want to help other women. But I'm going to get personal. Why are coaching skills such an essential leadership skill today?
Coaching skills are essential because it's about resilience. If you're just constantly telling someone they need to improve or they need to change their performance, again, after a while, you're going to start to sound like a broken record. But if you truly want to inspire someone to change, it's asking these powerful, open-ended questions to find out what's going on with them. And that's what coaching is. So I mentioned at the beginning of the show that an employee today wants to know that their manager cares about them. And when you sit down to actually have a coaching conversation with your employee, you're making time for them. You're giving them your undivided attention in this busy world, and you're asking them really thoughtful questions. They feel that connection in the moment, and they sense that you actually care about them. And that's why coaching skills are so important. If you want long-lasting change to an employee's performance, you want to unlock that motivation, coaching questions, coaching skills are absolutely the way to go for a modern manager.
So, what's the potential cost of avoiding a difficult conversation at work?
The cost is quite high. I mean, there's the cost, the actual bottom line cost of lost productivity, and that lost performance. I mean, when people are avoiding dealing with a difficult situation, they often call in sick. So there's a tremendous bottom line impact. But then there's the stress. And as I've mentioned throughout the show here, it's all having these skills is all about building your resilience. And if you're losing sleep at night because you have to deal with this difficult conversation that you don't know how to deal with, that's a tremendous hit to your resilience as a female leader. And so there's the cost to you, your health, and your career. And then, of course, if you're avoiding a difficult conversation, you don't necessarily look like the most effective leader. And so I've had managers come through my program. Module 5 is the difficult conversations module. And they tell me that that's the module they've been waiting for the entire program. They tell me that if they had this module, a month ago, it would have saved them a week and a half of trying to figure out how to address a situation without the skills and the tools that they need. So it is about productivity. There is a bottom line impact, but for me, it's about resilience and saving you the stress.
So we have less than a minute left. Why is the cost higher for women?
I think the cost is higher for women because the standards are higher for us. I mentioned earlier, women typically have to perform at a higher level, whether that's true, whether we feel like we have to perform at a higher level. And I think that women are conditioned to be people pleasers and to be the peacekeepers. But you know what? Sometimes you have to use that assertiveness. You have to use that candor with kindness to just address a situation head on. But to do that effectively, you're going to need the difficult conversation skill set.
Corina, thank you so much. This has been really educational and helpful. And I know that you have helped many Canadian women with today's episode. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Corina believes every level of leadership will demand more from you and therefore requires its own set of skills and tools. Invest in your leadership development at every stage of the leadership journey to avoid career roadblocks. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski, and I'm here to empower you and make frugality fashionable. Thank you so much for watching. Bye for now.